I had been waiting at the city clerk's office for 3 hours. My pathetic fiancé had stood me up for the third time. I was devastated and about to leave when the clerk made a joke. "That handsome young man over there has been waiting half the day too. You two would make a lovely couple." We looked at each other for 10 seconds. Then in unison we said, "Yes." 10 minutes later I had a husband. But on my wedding night, I was in shock at my own audacity. The rain began to fall heavily, drumming rhythmically on the metal roof of the parking garage, creating a gloomy and eerie sound, as if trying to drown out my already depressed mood. I sat motionless on a cold blue plastic chair in the waiting area, my empty gaze fixed on the black screen of my phone, which had long since been turned off. It was the third time. Yes, exactly the third time Dante had left me stranded on the most important day of a woman's life. I had been sitting there for 3 hours from the moment the afternoon sun was still warm until the sky turned into the lead and gray of a thunderstorm, only to receive a text message that was as brief as it was cruel. Something came up. Important client meeting. Baby, you're always so understanding. Next time. Okay. The sentence, "Baby, you're always so understanding," felt like a knife to my pride. I laughed bitterly as tears welled up in my eyes. I looked down at the elegant white dress I had spent a week choosing, and then touched the 6E ultrasound reporting in my purse. I had planned to give him a huge surprise to tell him that we weren't just signing our marriage license, but also welcoming a new life. But in response to my careful preparation, I received only his habitual absence, an empty apology, and the absolute priority he always gave to his work and social connections. Miss Higgins, the clerk, glanced at the wall clock. The ticking of the second hand echoed clearly in the silence. She sighed, closed a file on her desk, and looked at me with pity. "Honey, office hours are over. I doubt he's coming. Why don't you go home and come back another day?" I was just about to stand up to scrape together the little dignity I had left and leave this place when my gaze fell on a reflection in the glass partition separating the different areas. On the other side, in the waiting area for couples filing for divorce or singles affidavit, sat a man in a black shirt. He had just hung up his phone wearing an expression of helplessness mixed with extreme exhaustion. With his long, slender hand, he massaged his temple as if trying to suppress a severe headache. As if sensing my gaze, he looked up, and in that moment I saw in his eyes the empathy of someone who shared my misfortune. Miss Higgins looked at both of us. Perhaps the heavy atmosphere of disappointment was suffocating her, so she made a joke to break the silence. "What a coincidence. That handsome young man over there has been waiting half the day too. I heard he got stood up for the third time as well. Today you are both standing there empty-handed. Why don't you two team up so such a beautiful day isn't wasted?" That innocent joke seemed to freeze time. That stranger and I stared at each other for 10 seconds. In his eyes I saw no mockery, but only deep despair, indignation, and a hint of that recklessness found in people who have been pushed to their limits. Suddenly, he stood up and walked quickly toward me, bringing with him the cold air of the rain outside and a faint scent of tobacco. He looked me straight in the eyes. His voice was deep and raspy, but every word was clear. "My name is Malik. I'm 30 years old. I have my own company, no bad habits and no debts. My parents are still alive and I have a younger sister. If you are serious and need a marriage right now, let's get married." I was stunned, my heart hammered in my chest as if it wanted to jump out, not from emotion, but because of the insanity of this proposal. But then the image of Dante partying, his empty promises, and the fetus growing inside me every day awakened a rebellious demon within me. Why should I wait for someone who didn't value me? Why should I leave humiliated and under the pitying gazes of others? I gripped the handle of my purse, raised my head, looked at Malik, and nodded in a fit of madness. "Agreed. My name is Kesha. I'm 29. I have all the papers right here." Miss Higgins's jaw dropped, her eyes wide behind her thick glasses. She didn't know how to react to such an unusual situation. But since the affidavit and files for both of us were already complete and in order, the process went incredibly fast. Only 15 minutes later, with the firm sound of the stamp on the paper, Malik and I officially became husband and wife. I held the marriage certificate, which still smelled of fresh ink, and looked at the man who had just become my husband. A feeling of strangeness and unreality washed over me. Malik tucked the document into the inner pocket of his jacket and turned to me. His eyes lacked any warmth. They reflected only cold, hard reality. Let's go. It's too late to regret it now. I huddled on the gray sofa in Malik's apartment, feeling a chill that penetrated to my bones. Although the rain had stopped long ago outside, his apartment on the 12th floor of a mid-range condo building was so clean it felt impersonal, more like a real estate agent's model unit than a home. There were no family photos, no decorations, just cool black and white tones and a silence that enveloped everything. That was my wedding night. No candles, no flowers, no promises of eternal love. Just the hum of the ventilation and the discomfort of two strangers connected by a fragile piece of paper. Malik placed a glass of lukewarm water on the table in front of me. Steam rose in a fine mist. He sat on the chair opposite, keeping a safe, polite distance. He looked at me, his deep eyes seeming to assess me. Then he broke the oppressive silence. I think we need to speak plainly. The master bedroom has fresh linens. You can use it. I'll sleep on the couch in the living room. His respect, though distant, relieved me and simultaneously made me a little sad. I took a sip of water to calm myself. Malik sighed and leaned back in his chair. His voice grew deeper, laden with a fatigue he couldn't hide. My mother has terminal lung cancer. The doctors say she doesn't have much time left. Maybe just a few months. I froze. The hand holding the glass trembled slightly. I looked up at him and waited for him to continue. Malik smiled bitterly, a crooked smile full of pain. Her only wish is to see me settled down before she closes her eyes for good. My ex-girlfriend left me for her boss right when she found out about my mother's illness. She didn't want to be burdened with a family dealing with cancer. Every word was like a heavy stone thrown into a calm lake churning up my spirit. It turned out that behind his cool facade and his rushed decision to marry lay a family tragedy and a heartbreaking love for his mother. I looked at the stranger before me and felt a mixture of pity and fear, realizing I had just walked into another mess. A marriage without love with the burden of a sick in-law family. And what was worse, I was deceiving him. My boldness at the clerk's office that afternoon now revealed itself as a real burden, a weight on my shoulders that made it hard to breathe. I couldn't continue to deceive a decent man who was in such an extreme situation. My conscience wouldn't allow it. I took a deep breath, gathered all my courage, placed a hand on my stomach, and said with a shaky but firm voice, "Malik, I have to tell you something. I'm pregnant. It's my ex-boyfriend's." The silence became absolute. I lowered my head, not daring to look him in the eyes, expecting an outburst of rage, insults, or for him to throw me out of the apartment immediately. But there was no yelling, only the rhythmic sound of his fingers drumming on the wooden table, creating a dry, hollow sound. Quite a while later, Malik spoke. His voice wasn't as angry as I had imagined. It held only an infinite bitterness. "My ex. She's probably pregnant by her boss right now, too. We really are. Two fools who were thrown away like expired goods." I looked up, startled, and saw resignation and deep sadness in his eyes without the slightest trace of contempt toward me. He looked directly at me and proposed an arrangement I couldn't believe. "You need a name for this child. I need a wife so my mother can die in peace. Let's maintain this relationship. I won't give you any trouble and I won't let anyone harm you or your child. In return, you help me play the role of the perfect daughter-in-law for my mother." This proposal was like a life preserver thrown to a drowning person, but it was also a sentence condemning me to an endless farce. That night, curled up under a strange blanket, tears ran silently down my cheeks, soaking the pillow. I touched my still flat stomach and felt the presence of this little life growing day by day. I wondered how I would face my mother, Dante, and the whole world at dawn with my new identity as Malik's wife. From the living room, the sound of Malik tossing and turning on the narrow sofa reached me, reminding me that my life had taken a completely different course, full of thorns and storms. The weak light of dawn filtered through the thin curtains, waking me from a night of restless sleep and nightmares. I opened my eyes and needed a few seconds to realize I was in an unfamiliar room in a bed that wasn't mine. The bedroom door was ajar, and the soft clatter of plates and silverware drifted in from outside. The delicious smell of toasted bread rose to my nose, pulling me back to reality. I had married a man named Malik whom I barely knew less than 24 hours ago. I took a deep breath, tidied my messy hair, and went out trying to appear as natural as possible. Malik was already up. He stood in the kitchen dressed in gray pajamas, looking busy but orderly. When he saw me, he nodded slightly and placed 2 mugs of hot milk and a plate of toast with tomatoes and oil on the table. His voice was deep and steady. "Good morning. Eat something and then we'll go to the hospital." I asked the doctor for permission to visit my mother early. Breakfast passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by the quiet sound of chewing. We were like 2 actors reviewing their lines one last time before stepping onto the stage. Malik gave me basic information so our story would be consistent for his mother. We had been friends for a long time. Our feelings had developed naturally, and since we got along well, we decided to marry. It wasn't an impulsive moment. Malik's old car pulled up in front of the oncology clinic, a place permeated by the smell of disinfectant and the somber atmosphere of life and death. I gripped the handle of my purse with sweaty, cold hands. A sense of guilt suffocated me at the thought that I would be deceiving a person on the brink of death. Malik's mother lay in a spotless white hospital bed. Her body was wasted away from long chemotherapy sessions, and her head, almost completely bald, was covered by a burgundy wool beanie. Yet, when she saw Malik and me walk in hand, her tired eyes lit up with a strange vitality like a lamp about to go out that has just been refilled with oil. "Mama, I brought my wife to visit you," Malik said with a trembling voice, gently squeezing my hand as if to instill courage in me. Ms. Ada tried to sit up. I rushed over to help her and stammered, "Good afternoon. I'm Kesha." She took my hand, a bony but surprisingly warm hand. She looked at me firmly with teary eyes. "How beautiful. Finally, this son of mine decided to bring you home for good." I feared, quiet as he is, he would end up an eternal bachelor. She laboriously took off the sapphire bracelet she wore on her wrist, an old sparkling piece of jewelry, and insisted on putting it on me. "This belonged to my mother. I kept it my whole life for my daughter-in-law. Now I hand it over to you. Take care of each other and love each other very much." As I held the heavy bracelet and saw her satisfied smile, tears burst uncontrollably from me. I cried not only from emotion, but also from shame at the sincerity of this mother. When we left the hospital, my spirits were at rock bottom. The persistent ringing of my phone in my pocket interrupted my thoughts. It was Dante. His name on the display made my heart cramp with pain and anger. I looked at Malik and he nodded at me to answer. I took a deep breath and took the call. "Where are you? I'll pick you up and take you to dinner to make it up to you. I was so drunk yesterday I fell asleep." Dante's voice was still mocking and carefree, as if standing up his fiancée at the clerk's office was something as trivial as forgetting to buy a loaf of bread. The accumulated rage erupted. I answered coldly, "That's not necessary. I'm busy. I'm enjoying my honeymoon." There was a second of silence on the other end, then laughter. "Baby, are you mad again? What honeymoon? Don't joke around." I said nothing more. I took a photo of the marriage certificate and texted it to him. Then I hung up. Less than a minute later, my phone vibrated with a message full of resentment. "You dare cheat on me? You're pregnant with my child. You think you can get away? Meet me right now. If not, I'm coming to your company and making a scene." Malik glanced at the display. He didn't ask much. He just started the car. His voice was cold but imposing. "Get in. I'll drive you to the meeting. You are legally my wife now, and I won't let anyone intimidate you, not even the father of your child." The coffee shop was in a discreet corner below my office building. At this time it was almost empty. Dante was already waiting. His appearance was quite pathetic. Wrinkled shirt, bloodshot eyes. When he saw Malik and me walk in together, his gaze flashed with surprise, but quickly shifted to contempt. He leaned back in his chair with a superior air. "Sit down," he said without deigning to look at Malik. "Is this the fake husband you picked up off the street? He doesn't look bad, but I bet his pockets are empty." Malik wasn't fasted. He pulled out a chair for me and sat calmly beside me, ordering a glass of water. His calm contrasted with Dante's crudeness. I stared at the man I had loved for 3 years and asked coldly, "Why did you call me here? If it's just to talk nonsense, I don't have time." Dante smiled scornfully and leaned forward. "Kesha, don't be childish. I know you're angry about yesterday, but I have my reasons. I'm being promoted to deputy director, But the condition is that I marry the general director's daughter. I froze. The reason he had left me wasn't that he was busy, but that he was busy climbing the corporate ladder. He continued speaking as if doing me a favor. Marrying her is just a formality. You know I want you. Get an abortion. Be my secret mistress. And I'll support you. I'll buy you a house, a car. You won't lack anything. Every word was like a poison needle. Be his mistress. Abort my child. Who did he think I was? What was my child's life worth? Rage made me tremble. I couldn't control myself anymore. I took the glass of water in front of me and threw it in his face. You miserable wretch. Shut your mouth. I screamed, not caring about the curious stares. Dante jumped up. Furious. He raised his hand to hit me. You crazy bakey. How dare you? But before his hand reached me, another hand, strong as steel, caught it in the air. Malik had stood up without violence, squeezing Dante's wrist and pushing him back into the chair. His voice was quiet but threatening. This is America. Putting your hands on a woman is a crime. Hitting my wife is even worse. Dante rubbed his painful wrist and glared at Malik. Who are you? Do you know who I am? With a snap of my fingers you'll disappear from this city. Malik straightened his shirt collar and looked at Dante with the pity one offers a moral failure. I don't need to know who you are, but I know you're harassing my wife. The cameras in this place are recording, and I just recorded your entire interesting conversation about your wedding plans with your boss's daughter. Would you like me to send the file to your general director so he can listen to it? Dante's face went from red to corpse pale. He stammered, not knowing what to say. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by the fear of exposure. Let's go, Malik said gently, turning to me. He took my trembling hand and led me out of the cafe, leaving Dante alone, exposed to everyone's stares. When we stepped into the fresh air, I felt alive again. I looked at Malik's strong back. For the first time after so many storms, I felt protected, not by empty promises, but by the actions of a real man. After the stormy meeting with Dante, I tried to compose myself to return to the office. The collaboration project with the Solaris Group was the fruit of 3 months of my work, and also my chance to prove my worth and be promoted to creative director. When I entered the office, I noticed a strange mood. The murmuring stopped as I passed. My colleagues' glances were no longer admiring, but full of mistrust, suspicion, and a little hidden shot in Freud. Tasha, my direct competitor for the position, came to my desk with her usual sugary smile. Kesha, I heard you got married in a rush. You must be exhausted. Drink this to get your strength back. The meeting this afternoon is important. Don't let your personal matters affect you. I thanked her and pushed the carton of milk aside. A vague feeling of unease crept over me. Tasha was never friendly without a reason. Her smile always hit sharp knives. The meeting began at 2 p.m. in the presence of the general director and representatives from the Solaris Group. I stepped confidently onto the podium and opened the presentation I had prepared. But as soon as the first slide appeared, a murmur went through the room. The general director frowned and slammed his hand on the table. Miss Vance, how do you explain this? He threw another dossier onto the table. It was the proposal from the advertising agency Creative Star, our biggest competitor. And the scariest part was that its content was identical to mine, from the basic concept and slogan down to the final market analysis. How is this possible? I stammered while cold sweat ran down my back. I looked around seeking help but met only cold stares. Then Tasha took the floor with a fake tone of regret. Director, I heard Kesha is in financial trouble and got married in a hurry. Maybe. Well, I don't dare speculate, but Creative Star announced this idea this morning. The accusation of selling out the company hung over my head like a death sentence for my career. The IT department was called immediately. The result left me speechless. My computer history showed that at noon, exactly when I was at lunch, an email with the data had been sent from my device to the creative director of Creative Star. I didn't do that at that time. I wasn't here, I shouted desperately. But the evidence on the screen made any defense useless. The general director looked at me with disappointment and decided coldly, while the matter is being investigated, Ms. Vance is suspended from duty. Hand the project over to Ms. Tasha and prepare to testify before the disciplinary committee. I was petrified. I felt the world collapsing at my feet. I packed my things into a box. Tasha walked past me and whispered triumphantly in my ear. To compete with me, you still lack a lot, honey. Go home and take care of your fake husband. I left the building with the box in my arms. The evening sun was setting and people hurried indifferently past a failure who had just been thrown out of the game. I didn't cry. It seemed my tears had dried up. I understood it wasn't a coincidence but a perfect trap to sink me. I arrived home as the city lights were turning on. Malik was sitting at his desk. The light of the monitor illuminated his serious face. When he saw me with the box, he didn't seem surprised. He stood up silently and took the heavy box from my hands. I collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted, ready for his questions and accusations. Did they fire you? He asked with strange calmness. I nodded and told him everything that had happened. When I finished, I lowered my head, awaiting his judgment. Malik was silent for a moment, then went to the kitchen and brought me a glass of lukewarm water. He sat opposite me, looked me in the eyes, and asked only a single question. Did you do it? I raised my gaze and shook my head firmly. No, I swear to you I didn't do it. I may be broke, but I would never sell my professional ethics. Malik nodded, his face relaxing to show absolute trust. That's enough. I believe you. Just those 3 words, but they were more powerful than 1,000 empty consolations. I felt a lump in my throat, and the tears I had held back all afternoon finally burst forth. For the first time, someone believed me unconditionally. Give me your laptop, and if you can, try to remember if you logged into your work account on any other device. Malik's voice became professional and sharp. I remembered he was an IT specialist and had his own software company. I quickly gave him my laptop. His fingers flew over the keyboard as lines of code scrolled across the screen. Your company's security is pretty laughable, he commented. They installed a keylogger on your computer, probably via a USB drive or a link you accidentally clicked. This software records everything you type, including passwords. He typed a bit more and then pointed to an IP address on the screen. Here is the trace of the unauthorized access. The email wasn't sent from your office computer, but remotely via a proxy server to mask the true IP. But whoever did this was an amateur. They forgot to delete the system logs on your laptop when the data synced. Malik followed the trail. About 30 minutes later, he sighed with relief and turned the screen toward me. I found the original IP address. It comes from a cafe with Wi-Fi right across from your office at lunchtime. And most importantly, I recovered a fragment of a chat the spyware accidentally captured. On the screen was a blurry but readable screenshot of a chat. The sender was Tasha MKT and the recipient Dante DJ. Dante Hooks. The message was short but incriminating. I already sent the material to Creative Star. Remember to transfer the rest to me. That little brat Kesha is finished. I stared at the screen in horror. It turned out that not only Tasha but also Dante was behind this conspiracy. He didn't just want me to lose my child. He wanted to drag me through the mud and take my career and my honor. Malik took my ice-cold hand. We have the evidence. Tomorrow I'm going to the company with you. The warmth of his hand comforted me. I looked at him and felt infinite gratitude. In the middle of the storm of my life, I had found a safe harbor. Even if it was an unexpected marriage, it was strangely sincere. After I had the evidence Malik had collected, I didn't send it to management immediately. I sat in silence, staring at the printed messages with mixed feelings. Tasha and Dante's betrayal disgusted me. But when I thought of Tasha's situation, I hesitated. Tasha was a single mother. Her daughter had a congenital heart defect and was waiting for surgery. Everyone in the company knew that. I understood that desperation can drive people to do terrible things for money, but that didn't mean I would tolerate evil. The next morning, I met Tasha in a quiet tea room. When she saw me, she flinched but tried to remain calm. I didn't beat around the bush. I put the documents on the table. Tasha, I think you should see this. Her face went pale as she read the chat with Dante. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Kesha, I'm sorry. I had no other choice. My daughter needs the money for the surgery urgently, and Dante promised me $100,000 if I did it. I looked at her with a mixture of pity and anger. $100,000. That was the price for a person's conscience and career. I took a deep breath. I know your situation, but did you think about what would happen to me? How it would affect my life and my child's. Because I'm pregnant too. To save your daughter, you wanted to destroy my child and me? Tasha looked at me with eyes full of remorse and fear. She grabbed my hand. I made a mistake. I'm really sorry. Do what you want, but please don't tell the police. If I go to jail, my daughter will be left all alone. Her plea as a mother softened my heart. I'll give you two options. First, I send all this to management and the police. Second, you go in yourself. You confess everything and testify to clear my name. If you choose the second, I will ask for mitigating circumstances to be considered so you aren't criminally prosecuted. Tasha looked at me in astonishment. Perhaps she hadn't expected me to give her a way out. She nodded repeatedly through tears. I'll do it. I'll confess everything. Thank you, Kesha. Thank you for not backing me into a corner. On Monday morning in the tense conference room of the executive suite, Tasha confessed everything. The general director turned to me with a serious and disappointed face. Ms. Vance, the company owes you an apology. Your suspension is lifted. You can return to your post and continue with the project. The news spread quickly. Tasha was fired but not criminally prosecuted, just as I had promised. As for Dante, the position of deputy director, he dreamed of vanished into thin air. His reputation in the industry crashed and his career built on trickery faced collapse. That night, while Malik and I were eating dinner, violent blows echoed against the door. It was Dante screaming like a madman. Come out. You dare ruin my life? I was startled. Malik signaled me to stay quiet. He went to the door, looked through the peephole and took out his phone. Calmly, he began recording a video and called out, Dante, I advise you to calm down and leave. You are disturbing the peace. Open the door or I'll kill you both. He continued to roar, kicking the door. He was drunk or crazy. Malik wasn't fazed. He didn't open the door or use violence. He called the building super and the local police. In 5 minutes the noise changed. The neighbors, simple, hardworking people, came out into the hallway. The super's voice rang out. Hey, what kind of scene are you making? Do you want me to call security? Dante, as arrogant as he acted, folded before the community. When he saw the police coming up the stairs, he covered his face and fled, stumbling. Malik opened the door, thanked everyone and closed it. I saw him relax and then he hugged me, a firm and warm embrace. It's over. I'm here. No one will hurt you, he whispered. I leaned my head against his chest and felt completely safe. Dante had shown his true face as a coward and Malik, my husband on paper, was the fortress protecting me from the storm. The days of peace passed fleetingly. On a rainy afternoon, terrible news came from the hospital. Malik's mother's illness had drastically worsened. The cancer had metastasized to her bones and brain. She had only days left. Malik and I took turns at the hospital. Watching the life drain from her fragile body broke my heart. In a rare moment of clarity, Miss Ida called me to her. She pulled an old savings book from under her pillow and pressed it into my hand with trembling fingers. Kesha, this is the little I saved in my whole life selling vegetables. It's not much, but take it to provide for my grandbaby. Her voice was a choppy whisper. I took the book, tears rising in my eyes, and shook my head. Mama, I can't accept this. Keep it for your treatment. She smiled, a weak smile but full of understanding. Silly girl, I know exactly how things stand with me. I know you two married in a rush to make me happy. I froze and looked at Malik. He also lowered his head, his shoulders shaking. It turned out this mother knew everything. She knew we weren't a couple in love. She had noticed our formality, the clumsiness of our gestures, but she never betrayed us. She tolerated our lie because she trusted her mother's instinct. But I see that you are a good girl. She squeezed my hand, her gaze piercing my soul. Malik is a bit rough, but he has a big heart. Fate brings people together, but happiness depends on oneself. Please take care of him for me. Her last words were like a sacred mandate binding my life to that of the man kneeling beside the bed. She looked at us one last time with eyes full of love and then slowly closed them. Her hand and mine relaxed, and the heart monitor emitted a long shrill beep, announcing the end of a life. His mother's funeral took place on a day of pouring rain. Dressed in mourning, I stood beside Malik. I accepted the condolences of those present. I cried for her as if she were my own mother, because in those few days as her daughter-in-law, I had received an affection from her that I had lacked for a long time. Malik stood there with red eyes, but without shedding a tear, remaining strong to organize everything. Seeing his lonely and resilient figure in the incense smoke filled me with immense compassion. From that moment on, what was between us was no longer a cold marriage contract, but a bond of affection and mutual support. Barely 3 days after the funeral, while the pain was still fresh, the true storm broke over us. That early morning, as Malik lit incense at his mother's altar, there was persistent knocking at the door. I opened it to find 2 police officers and a man in plain clothes. Their faces were serious and cold. "Is Mr. Malik Thorne here? We have an arrest warrant and an order for pretrial detention for fraud and tax evasion." The officer showed me a paper with a red stamp. I felt the world sway. Malik came out surprised but quickly found his calm again. He offered no resistance, only turned to me with a look full of regret and worry. "Kesha, stay home and stay calm. Don't worry about me. I'll clear everything up. Lock the door tight." The police car took Malik away, leaving me rooted to the spot. But that wasn't all. At noon, a group of tattooed and menacing-looking men hammered on the door, threw red paint on the metal door, and plastered the whole hallway with notices full of insults. "Where is Malik? Pay what you owe. You can't hide." The shouts echoed through the whole building. I huddled terrified in the room, hugging my belly. Then the terrible truth became clear to me. Malik was dragging huge debts with him. I imagined it was the money he had borrowed to buy expensive imported drugs not covered by insurance to prolong his mother's life. He had sacrificed everything, his future and his safety, to be a good son. My phone rang. It was Brianna, my best friend. "Kesha, where are you? I heard Malik's company assets were seized. The creditors are looking for him everywhere. Pack your things and come to my place. It's dangerous to stay there." I packed some clothes in a bag, put on a mask, and snuck out down the fire escape. On the street, I felt like a fugitive. My husband arrested, my house besieged, and me pregnant. I didn't know what would become of me tomorrow, but I knew I couldn't give up. I had to find a way to save Malik, to save the man who had landed behind bars out of love for his mother. That night, under the cover of darkness, Brianna and I snuck into Malik's sealed office. Thanks to a favor Brianna's father had done for the old security guard, we managed to get in through the back door for 15 minutes. The place was deserted. Without turning on the lights, we used the flashlights on our phones. I went straight to Malik's desk, just as he had once told me when he was drunk. Behind a picture was a small wall safe. Trembling, I entered his mother's birth date. The door opened. Inside was no money, only a stack of papers and a brown leather diary. I opened it. It was Malik's diary. In it, he described his struggle to save his mother. "The doctor says a new treatment could extend her life by 6 months, but it costs a fortune. I sold the car, mortgaged the house, but it's not enough." On another page, his writing was shaky. "Mr. Ferdinand, Dante's uncle, offered me a loan from his finance company, Progress. I know it's a trap, a predatory loan, but I have no other choice. Mama is suffering with every hour that passes." Tears blurred the words. I saw Malik alone in the night, wrestling between his honor and his mother's life. The contracts in the safe confirmed the trap. Business loans converted into personal debts with usurious interest rates. Malik wasn't a fraudster. He was the victim of a loan shark network run by the same people who now wanted to sink him. Dante and his uncle, who exploited his filial love to drive him into debt, put him in prison, and take over his company for a bargain price. "Look at this, Kesha." Brianna showed me other papers. They were the receipts of all transfers from the loan to the hospital to pay the bills and medications. Not a single dollar had flowed into his personal account. I pressed the diary and the papers to my chest. My husband, whom I once considered a stranger, had endured a storm all alone without telling me anything. Now it was my turn to fight for him. I returned home at 2 a.m., but I wasn't tired. Outrage and determination kept me awake. The next morning, I gathered all the wedding jewelry my mother had given me for my failed marriage to Dante, along with my meager savings for the baby, and sold everything. I felt not the slightest regret, but it wasn't enough to hire a good lawyer and cover part of the debt as the investigation required. I went to my boss's office and asked for a salary advance of 1 year. "Kesha, have you thought this through? Your husband is accused of a serious financial crime. It's very likely he'll go to prison. Putting money into that is a waste and you have to think about the baby. I answered him with my head held high. Boss, he isn't a fraudster. He's just a good son who was pushed into a corner. If I leave him now, I will regret it my whole life. With the money, I hired the best criminal defense attorney in the city, recommended by Brianna's father. On the day of the visit, I got up early and cooked beef stew, Malik's favorite dish. When I saw him through the glass partition, I hardly recognized him. He was gaunt with a shaved head and deep circles under his eyes. But when he saw me, the same worry as always flashed in his eyes. Kesha, what are you doing here? I told you not to worry about me. His voice was rough. Go get a divorce. I'll sign the papers. You're young. You have a future. Don't let the record of a criminal affect you and the child. I looked at him, smiling through tears. I placed my hand with which I was stroking my belly against the glass. Listen to me closely, Malik. I sold everything. I asked for an advance and hired the best lawyer. I don't need a clean slate. I need a father for my child. A husband who sacrifices himself for his family. Don't you dare give up. You have to get out of here to repay this debt to me. A debt of gratitude that will last a lifetime. Malik fell silent, his shoulders shaking. He lowered his head to hide his tears. In that moment, in the oppressive atmosphere of the prison, our bond solidified, more resilient than any vow of love. The trial took place on a gray lean day. In the solemn courtroom, I sat in the first row, hands clasped. Brianna squeezed my hand to calm me. Malik, standing before the podium, looked fragile but held his back straight. The prosecutor read the charges. Fraud, embezzlement of large sums of money. Every word was a nail in my husband's coffin. When it was the defense's turn, our lawyer, an elderly, composed man, stood up. He presented the court with Malik's diary, the hospital bills, and above all, the fraudulent loan contracts from Mr. Ferdinand's finance company. Your Honor, the defendant, Malik, had no intention of appropriating any assets for his personal benefit. He acted out of necessity to save his mother's life, and more importantly, he was the victim of a loan shark network disguised as an investment. The room murmured as the lawyer revealed the relationship between Dante and Mr. Ferdinand, along with messages proving they had coerced Malik into signing blank contracts. The presiding judge's gaze softened as he considered these mitigating circumstances. Good reputation, first-time offender motivated by filial piety and efforts to make restitution. I held my breath. The defendant Malik Thorne is guilty of breach of trust. However, considering the numerous mitigating circumstances that he was the victim of a trap and did not act out of personal greed, the court sentences him to 2 years of probation. The defendant is released immediately in this courtroom. The gavel struck the wood, ending our nightmare. I burst into tears and hugged Brianna. They were tears of relief and happiness. Malik turned around and looked at me with red eyes. Even if his record would remain stained, he was at least free. We left the courthouse and the cloudy sky began to clear. A few shy sunbeams illuminated the path ahead of us. I knew it would be full of obstacles, but we would walk it together. The joy of the reunion was short-lived. The harsh reality of everyday life set in. Malik's company went definitively bankrupt, and his assets were seized to pay the debts. His reputation as a successful young director was replaced by the label ex-convict. He looked for work everywhere. But when they saw his criminal record, everyone closed their doors to him. Continued working with my 6-month pregnancy becoming increasingly obvious, and became the sole breadwinner of the family. Seeing Malik more depressed every day, smoking incessantly by the window, broke my heart. One evening when I came home late from work, I found him with his head buried on the table, dinner cold. I hugged him gently. Honey, don't get discouraged. If no one hires you, we'll do something else. As long as it's honest work, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Malik raised his gaze. His eyes shone with determination. You're right. I can't let my wife and child suffer anymore. I'm a man. I have to support this family. The next morning, he hung his suits in the closet and put on the orange uniform of a delivery service. The director, who only knew keyboards, now faced the burning summer sun, delivering packages all over the city. Once I saw him by chance, delivering an order to a luxurious office building, sweating and with dusty clothes. Ironically, the recipient was a former employee of his. The young man was petrified when he saw his former boss as a delivery guy. Malik, after a moment of shame, raised his head and smiled kindly. "Here is your package. Don't forget to give me 5 stars." The employee took it, moved and with respect. Malik left. His figure disappeared into the crowd, small but strong. That evening, he gave me the money he had earned, a handful of crumpled bills. His hands were starting to get calluses. I took this hard-earned money and felt it was more valuable than any fortune. We started over from the ashes without fame or luxury, but full of the love and support of 2 people who had learned to trust each other. Those quiet days were like the calm before the storm. I continued working without a break, trying to finish a big project before my maternity leave. Ignoring the back pain and fatigue, I told myself I just had to hold on a little longer, save a little more so Malik wouldn't have to strain himself so much, and so our son would be born without want. But I had forgotten that human resilience has a limit. That afternoon in the office, as I stretched for some documents on a high shelf, a sharp, tearing pain shot through my abdomen. I dropped the papers and doubled over in pain. This was no normal pain. My hands sweated, my vision blurred. "Kesha, are you okay?" "Blood. My God, she's bleeding." The scream of an intern alarmed the whole office. I looked down and saw a red pool spreading on the white floor. I began to lose consciousness, but my maternal instinct made me panic. I stammered, Save my child. Call my husband." My colleagues called an ambulance. The siren tore through the afternoon. They brought me into the ER half-conscious. I heard the doctors talking about placental abruption, massive hemorrhaging, fetal distress, and an emergency C-section to save the mother. The door to the ER opened and for a moment I saw Malik running toward me. He was wearing his delivery uniform. His suntan face was pale as wax. He shoved a security guard aside to get to my gurney, eyes red and full of tears. "Kesha, I'm here. Don't be afraid," he screamed with a voice broken by panic. He tried to take my hand, but a nurse stopped him. He knelt before the door of the operating room and begged the doctors, "Doctor, please save her. Save my wife and my child. If something happens to her, how am I supposed to go on living?" The image of this strong man, collapsed and helpless, was the last thing I saw before the anesthesia plunged me into darkness. In my unconsciousness, I continued to hear Malik's voice calling me. A heartbreaking scream. I woke up in a white room with a strong smell of ether. My head hurt and I felt a terrifying emptiness in my stomach. I touched my lower abdomen, previously round, now flat and bandaged. The feeling of loss was faster than the physical pain. I turned my head and saw Malik sleeping, his head resting on the edge of the bed, still holding my hand. When he felt my movement, he woke up. His eyes were swollen and he had a beard of several days. He looked at me with a mixture of infinite pain and relief. I moved my lips with a dry throat. "The baby, where is our son?" Malik didn't answer immediately. He leaned forward and kissed my forehead, a trembling kiss salty from tears. He squeezed my hand, his voice breaking. "Listen to me calmly. The doctors did everything possible, but the baby was too early. His lungs weren't developed. He passed away at 3 a.m. My mind went blank. He passed away. The baby I had carried for 7 months, whom I spoke to every night. Our only hope, he was no longer there. I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I remained motionless. Tears ran silently down my temples. The pain was too great. The following days were hell. I fell into a deep depression. I refused to speak, eat, or drink. I rejected the world, including Malik. But he didn't give up. He hid his own pain to care for me. I know he suffered just as much. He had loved this baby as if it were his own. He took unpaid leave to be with me day and night. He fed me patiently, washed me, told me trivial things to keep me connected to reality. Sometimes at night I pretended to sleep and heard him crying softly in the bathroom. Then he would come out, tuck me in, and hold my hand all night. His love and silent sacrifice were the anchor that prevented me from sinking into despair. I realized I had lost my child, but I couldn't lose him too. A month later my health improved, but my soul remained desolate. The psychologist suggested a change of scenery. On a Sunday, I took Malik on his old motorcycle to the outskirts, to a quiet place. We stopped in front of a large house with a wooden sign that read Sunflower Home. The laughter of children constricted my heart. I wanted to flee. Malik took my hand. "Trust me just for a moment. If you can't stand it, we'll leave." I went in reluctantly. The children, some with disabilities, others abandoned, had eyes full of innocent joy. I sat on a bench apart, my gaze crossed with that of a little girl standing alone in a corner. She was about 3 years old, thin, and wearing a worn floral dress. She had big, dark, and deeply sad eyes, a sadness that was inappropriate for her age. I walked over to her. She looked at me without fear. I crouched down. "Hi, what's your name?" She didn't answer. She just offered me the wild flower she held in her hand. "For you. Don't cry." I touched my face and realized I was crying. "Her name is Maya," said one of the caregivers. "She's very quiet. She was abandoned in front of a market a few months ago. She's very withdrawn, but she gave you a flower today. That must be a special connection." Maya looked at me and suddenly her small, dirty hand grabbed my pinky finger. In that moment a warm current ran through me, melting the ice in my heart. I hugged her and cried, but this time they were tears of redemption. I knew this child had chosen me, and I needed her to live again. The decision to adopt Maya happened quickly and naturally. We knew it would be difficult. When the caregiver saw Malik's file with his criminal record, she looked at us with concern. "Adoption laws are very strict. I'm sorry, but with this background it's unlikely to be approved." Malik didn't give up. With a sincerity that moved the woman, he said, "I made a mistake to save my mother, but I never hurt anyone. I promise to dedicate the rest of my life to compensating this child. Please help us." But the law is the law. That's when Brianna, my guardian angel, reappeared. Thanks to her father's contacts, she managed to get people to vouch for Malik's good conduct. She also helped me prove that my income as a freelance designer was stable. After 2 months of endless paperwork, the application was finally approved. On the day Mia came home, the sky was clear and the sun was shining. Malik and I were as nervous as if we were getting married. Maya, clutching her old teddy bear, looked at her new home with curious eyes, not letting go of my clothes. Our small rental apartment filled with light and warmth. Malik had built a small bed for her out of recycled wood and painted it a pink he thought she would like. I had sewn several dresses for her from fabric scraps. At our first dinner together, Maya sat in the high chair Malik had made for her. He served her the best piece of meat. "She is my daughter. Papa is the best cook in America." Maya looked at us both and smiled her first radiant smile. "Thank you, Papa Malik. Thank you, Mama Kisha." Those words made Malik turn around to wipe away a tear, and I melted with happiness. Our home finally had children's laughter after so many storms. The missing piece had fit into place. 3 years passed. Our little rental house was always full of laughter. Maya, now 6 years old, was a beautiful and well-behaved child. Her formerly sad eyes now beamed with joy. Our lives had also stabilized. Malik was no longer a delivery driver. Thanks to his effort and talent, a former partner hired him as technical director at a software company. His salary, even if not like before, allowed us to live comfortably, pay off debts, and save a little. I gave up my old job and dedicated myself to freelance design from home to take care of Maya. That afternoon, while I was braiding Mia's hair, she showed Malik a drawing. "Papa Malik, look, this is you fixing things. Mama cooking and me watering flowers." Malik smiled proudly. "How beautiful, my child. You're going to be a great artist, better than Mama Kesha." I looked at my two loves and felt immense peace. In these 3 years we never had a big wedding, but our love was deeper than any promise. Malik loved Maya as if she were his own daughter. "What are you thinking about?" asked Malik, hugging me from behind. "I'm thinking that life is fair, honey. It took a child from us, but it gave us an angel." He squeezed me tighter. "And to me it gave a wonderful wife. Without you I would have gone under long ago." That night, listening to the quiet breathing of my husband and daughter, I thanked fate. The storms of the past seemed far away. But I didn't know that the calm was only temporary, that another wave, much larger and more devastating, was about to arrive, threatening to destroy the little happiness we had built with such effort. One weekend, Brianna called to say she was coming to dinner with her new boyfriend. I prepared a special meal to meet the man who had conquered my demanding friend. Brianna arrived with Byron, a man in his 30s, tall, well-dressed, and with an intellectual look. He was very polite, and brought expensive gifts for us and for Maya. Yet, from the first moment I felt a strange unease. Although he smiled, his gaze on Maya was calculating, not that of someone who likes children. During dinner, he wouldn't stop asking questions about Mia's adoption. What a pretty child. She looks like she comes from a good family, not like an abandoned child, he commented casually. Malik, with his instincts sharpened by hardship, frowned and changed the subject. The dinner ended in an atmosphere of fake cordiality. Upon leaving, Byron turned to look at Maya one last time. That look froze the blood in my veins. 3 days later, Brianna called me in the middle of the night, crying. Kesha, he cheated on me. Byron stole all my savings and disappeared. I was in shock. It turned out Byron was a professional con artist and, what was worse, a distant cousin of Dante, my ex. He had approached Brianna as part of a plan to rob her and get close to our family. The next morning, I received an anonymous envelope. Inside were photos of Maya in the park at school, and a copy of her original birth certificate with the name of her biological mother, a document I had never seen. My phone rang. It was an unknown number, but the voice was Byron's. Hello, Kesha. I assume you received my gift, he said mockingly. What do you want? I screamed. Not much. I just know a secret about your adopted daughter that's worth a fortune. Her biological parents aren't just anybody. They're looking for her like crazy. If you don't want to lose her or don't want me to sell the information to them, prepare to negotiate. Byron's threat sent me into a panic. Malik, when he found out, maintained a surprising calm. We decided to return to Sunflower Home to find out the truth. The director of the center received us with concern. When she saw the birth certificate, she sighed. She pulled a jade medallion with an engraved phoenix of exquisite beauty from a wooden box. This is the only thing Maya was wearing when she was dropped off here. I hid it for fear someone would hurt her or claim her because of its value. This medallion proves she comes from a wealthy family. At that moment, my phone rang again. It was a video call from Byron. Do you believe me now? Little Maya's name is actually Destiny Sterling. She is the daughter of real estate magnates, the Sterling couple. Years ago, they went broke and had to flee the country. That's why they abandoned her. Now they've returned richer than ever, offering a reward of $200,000 to whoever finds her. $200,000. The number made me dizzy. But what froze my blood was the cruelty of these parents. I'll give you a chance, said Byron. $20,000 into my account, and I'll keep quiet. You have 3 days. After that, don't complain if the Sterlings knock on your door. The screen went black, leaving us in absolute despair. 20,000 was a fortune for us. But the fear of losing Maya was 1,000 times greater. To face Byron, we needed to know his weaknesses. Malik had a bold idea. Talk to Dante. Despite our hatred, he was his cousin. Through some contacts, I learned that Dante was in the prison infirmary with terminal stomach cancer. When I visited him, nothing remained of the arrogant director I knew. He was a walking skeleton. When he saw me, his eyes showed surprise and then deep remorse. Kesha, did you come to laugh at me? I know I made mistakes. Karma comes fast. I felt no hatred anymore, only pity. I didn't come for that. I came to ask you about Byron. Hearing the name, Dante's face twisted in rage. That scumbag isn't human. When I went to prison, he tricked my mother into signing over the last of the family property to him, and left her to die alone in a home. Be very careful with him, Kesha. He's wanted in 2 states for fraud. He's desperate. He's capable of anything. Once he bragged about having information on a rich family, probably your daughter's. Dante's information was gold. Byron wasn't invincible. He was a cornered criminal. Report him to the police. That will be the only good thing I do in my life. To atone a little for the child we lost, he said, weeping. The mention of our lost child hurt, but I decided to let it go. Rest. I'll do what you say. The past is the past. I left the prison as it started to rain. Dante was paying for his ambition. We still had a chance to fight for our happiness. 2 days before Byron's ultimatum expired, a luxurious black limousine pulled up in front of our modest house. Out stepped the Sterlings, Maya's biological parents. They entered without taking off their shoes, looking at our humble home with disdain. We are the Sterlings, said the woman. We came to take our daughter, Destiny. This place is a pigsty. There is no destiny here, I answered calmly. There is only my daughter Maya and she is at school right now. You have no right to just barge in like this. The man smiled scornfully and opened a briefcase full of bills. $100,000. That is payment for looking after her. You can buy a house and change your life with this. Take the money and sign the waiver of custody. Next week we're taking her to the U.S. I felt deep nausea. They thought they could buy their daughter as if she were an object. Get out. Take your money and go. I screamed at them. Maya is a human being, not merchandise you abandon and then try to buy back. She is my daughter and she is not for sale. Just at that moment, the school bus arrived and Maya ran in. Papa, Mama, I'm home. When she saw the strangers, she got scared and hid behind me. Destiny, my daughter. I am your mother. Mrs. Sterling shouted, trying to hug her. But Maya screamed and clung to me. Mama, who are they? I'm scared. Maya's reaction was a slap in the face for them. I hugged her tight. You saw it. She doesn't recognize you. Leave or I'll call the police. Since money didn't work, they resorted to power. 2 days later, we received a summons from court. They had hired an army of lawyers to sue us and strip us of custody. Their main argument was Malik's past. They claimed an ex-convict couldn't offer a safe and moral environment for a child. Contrasting this with the life of luxury and international education they could offer her. Malik broke down. It's my fault. My past is hurting our daughter. I took his hand. Don't say that. A court judges by the law but also with the heart. We raised her with all our love, and it shows justice won't take our daughter away. That night Brianna came running. She had walked through the whole neighborhood collecting signatures, from the super to the baker. Everyone had signed a petition of support and offered to testify in our favor. You are not alone, said the super, an old man with white hair. The whole neighborhood is a witness to your kindness. We are poor but rich in humanity. We will fight with you. The support of our neighbors was balm for our hearts and gave us strength for the uneven legal battle ahead. Just as the trial approached, bombshell news changed the course of things. Byron had been arrested while trying to blackmail the Stirlings themselves. It turned out his greed knew no limits. He hadn't just blackmailed us, but also demanded a cut of the reward for finding the child from them, threatening to reveal their dark past to the press. In his statement, Byron confessed everything to get a lighter sentence. The Stirlings hadn't just gone broke. They were part of an international money-laundering network. They hadn't abandoned Maya out of necessity, but as part of a calculated plan to flee the country with new identities. This is the definitive proof, said our lawyer. With these new facts, the plaintiff's moral authority has collapsed. No court would hand a child over to suspected criminals who also cruelly abandoned her. In Byron's statement, another detail was revealed. They hadn't come back for Maya out of love, but because she was the sole eyes to a multi-million-dollar trust fund her grandmother had left behind. They needed custody of her to access that money. Everything was a farce. We will win, Kesha said. Malik, not because we are richer but because we have a clear conscience. Divine justice takes time. But it comes. The scandal surrounding the Stirlings hit the media. Public pressure and the police investigation turned the tables. Now they were the suspects. The scales of justice tipped in our favor. At the mediation hearing, the couple seemed nervous. The judge, a middle-aged woman, turned gently to Maya. Maya, I know this is hard, but can you tell us who you want to live with? With your biological parents who will give you many toys, or with Papa Malik and Mama Kesha? Everyone held their breath. Maya stood up small in the huge room. She looked at the Stirlings and then at us. Suddenly, she burst into tears and ran to hug Malik. I'm not going away. I don't want toys. I only have one Papa Malik and one Mama Kesha. Don't send me away. The child's crying and words moved everyone. The judge wiped away a tear and banged the gavel. Children are not property. They have the right to choose where they feel happy and safe. The child's will is clear. Furthermore, the plaintiffs face serious accusations. Do you wish to withdraw the suit, or do you prefer the court to thoroughly investigate your suitability and the origin of your finances? The Stirlings pale whispered with their lawyer and lowered their heads. We withdraw the suit. In that moment, I hugged Maya and Malik and cried with happiness. 2 days later, Mrs. Sterling asked me for one last meeting before they left the country forever. We met in a discreet tea room. The arrogant woman from before was gone, replaced by a dejected and quiet figure. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. We lost. Tomorrow we leave for good. She offered me an envelope with money and the papers for a trust fund in Maya's name. This is the last thing I can do for her. I gently refused the money. Money can buy neither memories nor lost love. Maya doesn't need it. We are poor, but we can raise her to be a good person. If you really want to clear your conscience, donate this money to the orphanage where you abandoned her. Help other children. As for Maya, when she is 18, I will tell her the truth and she will decide. The woman burst into tears, bowed deeply to me and left. Her lonely figure disappeared into the drizzle. I sipped my tea. It was bitter at first but left a sweet aftertaste. I felt light, freed from a great burden. The storms were over and peace returned to our small family. One afternoon, Malik knelt before me in our small living room. He didn't have a bouquet of roses, but wildflowers in a small velvet box. Kesha, 3 years ago we got together out of desperation. I owe you a marriage proposal and a real wedding. Thank you for not letting go of my hand in the worst moments. Thank you for loving Maya as if she were your own. Will you be my wife for real this time? I looked at the man who had shared so many battles with me. I saw the lines around his eyes, signs of a hard life, and nodded, crying with happiness. He put a simple gold ring on my finger, and the three of us hugged. A week later, we celebrated our wedding in the courtyard of the housing complex. It was a modest party but full of warmth and joy, organized by our neighbors. The super officiated the ceremony. Brianna was my maid of honor and Maya, dressed like a princess, paved the way for us with a basket of flowers. I looked at Malik, Maya, all our friends, and felt my heart full of immeasurable happiness. We had traveled a long road, but finally we had arrived home. Time passed serenely and peacefully. A year after the wedding, on Maya's 7th birthday, while I was preparing the party, I felt a sudden dizziness and fainted. Kesha! Malik's horrified scream transported me back to the nightmare of 3 years ago. He carried me in his arms to the hospital, running like a madman. In the ER, while he waited outside, pale and trembling, the doctor came out smiling. Congratulations! Mother and fetus are doing perfectly well. Fetus? My wife is pregnant. Malik stammered in disbelief. The doctor nodded. Yes, 8 weeks along. She fainted from exhaustion and low blood pressure, but everything is fine. It's good news. Why do you look so scared? Malik slid down the wall and cried like a child. They were tears of relief, of a happiness so immense he couldn't believe it. When I woke up and heard the news, emotion overwhelmed me. Malik came in with Maya, leaned over and kissed me. Thank you, Kesha. Thank God. Maya, you're going to be a big sister. The girl jumped for joy and put her ear to my stomach. Hi, baby. I'm your sister, Maya. Come out soon to play with me. The room filled with laughter and tears of joy. The old wounds had healed and left room for new hope. On a Sunday afternoon, the sun gilded our small garden. I watched as Malik taught Maya and our little son Felix, who was already 2 years old, how to play chess. The sound of their laughter was the soundtrack of our peace. I received a message from Brianna. Byron had been sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Tasha had moved back to her hometown in shame after her dismissal. I read the message and smiled. The past didn't touch me anymore. The law of karma always fulfills itself. I looked up at the sky and remembered that rainy afternoon at the clerk's office. That day, I had desperately bet my life on a marriage to a stranger. Who would have thought that this bet would bring me a family, a wonderful husband, and beautiful children? Happiness is sometimes found in brave decisions, and in the love built every day. Mama, come look. Papa lost at chess. Maya's voice tore me from my thoughts. I stood up and walked over to them. Malik looked at me full of love, and pulled me into his arms. I took his hand, the same rough but warm hand that had led me through so many storms. The past was closed. Tomorrow the sun would rise again, and we would continue to live, love, and cherish every precious moment of this simple and wonderful life. If you liked my story and want to hear more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support me, you can do it through Super Thanks. It would mean a lot. In the comments, tell me which city you're watching from and what time it is so I can see how far my story reaches. I've added 2 more life stories on the screen just for you. Click one now and let's keep spending time together. Much love.